You ever get that feeling, you see a news alert flash on your phone, something about crime nearby,
Yeah,
or you're just talking with friends and someone brings up, like, does it feel safe around here? That kind of conversation.
absolutely. That stuff definitely makes you stop and think, especially, when you're figuring out where you want to live, build your life.
Right. It makes you wonder what's actually being done, what policies are shaping things in our communities.
And that's exactly what we're digging into today. There's this significant policy development, an executive order aimed right at those kinds of concerns.
Exactly. So we're doing a deep dive on this executive order that just came out April 28th, 2025. It's all about strengthening law enforcement. Think of this as getting the inside track. What's it trying to do? What are the main parts? And, why might it actually matter to you? We'll try to cut through the jargon.
Yeah, our mission here is basically to unpack the key pieces of this order, understand the intended effects on policing, on public safety, give you a clear sense of where this policy is headed.
And the title itself, it doesn't exactly bury the lead, does it?
No at all.
It's called Strengthening and Unleashing America's Law Enforcement to Pursue Criminals and Protect Innocent Citizens.
Yeah, pretty direct.
So, right away, the focus.
You really do. The order kicks off by stating that, safe communities depend on a tough and well-equipped police force. That's the core idea.
Okay.
So the central goal is really empowering state and local police to aggressively handle dangerous criminal behavior, protect citizens. This could really change how local departments work, what tools they have.
Okay, so tough and well-equipped, aggressive policing, that's the main direction. But I saw something in there about concerns over local leaders. What was that about?
Yeah, that's a really important part. The order expresses concern that some local leaders are, quote, demonizing law enforcement.
Demonizing.
Yeah, and putting restrictions on them that, according to the order, make it harder to enforce the law effectively.
Yeah.
The administration seems to view this as contributing to crime.
So a potential clash there between federal direction and some local approaches.
Potentially, yes. It frames it as negatively impacting residents, businesses,
Right.
that kind of thing.
And to sort of fix this perceived problem, the order sets out three main aims.
Exactly.
Oh.
First, establish best practices for what it called high-impact local police forces.
High impact.
Second, protect officers who are allegedly wrongly accused or treated unfairly by state or local officials. And third, just basically surge resources, get more resources to officers who need them.
Got it. Best practices, protecting officers, more resources. Seems comprehensive. And there was also that line about focusing on ending crime, not, what was it? Harmful, illegal, race and sex-based equity policies?
Right. The order explicitly states that objective. Law enforcement should focus on ending crime, not these policies it labels as harmful and illegal. It suggests a viewpoint within the administration that maybe some equity initiatives are seen as getting in the way of effective policing.
Does it say which equity policies?
No, it doesn't actually define them in the document itself. So that leaves things a bit open to interpretation,
Okay, definitely flags the administration's priorities there. Let's dig into some of the specific actions. It talks about legal defense for officers. What does that actually involve?
Okay, so Section 2 directs the Attorney General, the head of the Justice Department, to set up a system. This system is for providing legal resources and something called indemnification.
Indemnification? What's that?
It's basically like legal protection. It means the government would potentially cover the costs or liabilities an officer might face from lawsuits or legal issues that come up because of actions they took while on duty.
So if an officer gets sued for something they did as part of their job, this aims to help cover their legal bills or settlements?
That's the core idea, yeah. It could really change the calculation for officers in maybe tricky situations. Might make them feel more supported in taking assertive action.
Interesting. And it's not just government money.
No, the order specifically mentions bringing in pro bono help, so free legal assistance from private sector lawyers as part of this support system.
Okay, that's quite a safety net they're proposing. Now, let's broaden out. How else does the order try to empower state and local police? There seem to be a whole list of things.
Yes, Section 3A lays out a bunch of actions for the Attorney General and other agency heads. It's about maximizing federal help. One big one is providing new best practices for, and here's that phrase again, aggressive policing.
Aggressive policing. That phrase itself.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how different places will interpret that, right?
Absolutely. It's definitely a term that could mean different things to different people, different departments.
What else is in that section?
Well, it also mandates expanding access to training, improving the quality of that training too,
Okay, better training.
and also pushing for increased pay and benefits for officers. Plus, strengthening and expanding legal protections for them, even beyond that indemnification piece we talked about.
So, better training, better pay, stronger legal backup. It sounds like they're trying to make policing a more appealing career, maybe. Especially for people our age thinking about jobs.
That can certainly be part of the goal, yeah. Making it more attractive, more sustainable as a profession.
And what about the justice system more broadly? Any directives there?
The order pushes for seeking tougher sentences, enhanced sentences, for crimes committed against police officers.
Okay.
It also promotes investing more in prison security and capacity. And, this is interesting, it emphasizes improving crime data.
Crime data? How so?
Investing more in collecting it, sharing it, and making it more uniform across the country. So everyone's working with the same kind of information.
Right. Having consistent, reliable data seems crucial. Like, how can you fix a problem if you don't really have a clear picture of what's happening?
Exactly. Better data could lead to smarter decisions about where resources go, what crime prevention strategies actually work in, your community.
Makes sense. Now, there is also something about reviewing existing agreements, consent decrees, I think.
That's a big one. Yes, Section 3B. It requires the Attorney General to review all ongoing federal consent decrees.
And those are, remind me.
They're basically legally binding agreements, usually between the federal government, the DOJ, and a local police department. They often come about after investigations find patterns of, say, civil rights violations. The decrees mandate specific reforms.
Okay, so federal oversight to force changes.
Pretty much. And this order says the AG has to review all of them, plus other agreements like out-of-court settlements within 60 days.
60 days, that's fast.
Very fast. And the goal of the review is to find any parts of these agreements that are seen to, quote, unduly impede the performance of law enforcement functions.
Unduly impede, so getting in the way of police work.
That's the assessment they're supposed to make. And if they find parts that do, the direction is to modify them, rescind them entirely, or move to end the agreement.
Wow. So potentially rolling back federally mandated reforms in some police departments.
That's the potential implication, yes. It signals a possible shift away from that kind of direct federal oversight, which has been a major tool for addressing systemic policing issues. Could really alter things on the ground in some cities.
Yeah, that sounds like it could have huge consequences for police-community relations in certain places. Okay, now switching gears a bit. National security assets. That seemed kind of out of left field for local policing.
It does stand out, doesn't it? Section 4 talks about this. It directs the Attorney General and, interestingly, the Secretary of Defense.
That's Pentagon.
Yes, to increase the provision of excess military and national security assets to state and local police within 90 days.
Excess military gear going to local cops, like more armored vehicles and stuff.
That's often what excess military assets refers to, yes. Things the military no longer needs. The idea presented is to give local LE more resources.
Okay.
But it's not just equipment. Within that same 90 days, the Secretary of Defense, working with the AG, also has to figure out how military and national security assets in general, including training, non-lethal tech, maybe even personnel, can be used effectively to prevent crime locally.
Wait, military personnel helping with local crime prevention? That seems like a blurring of lines.
It definitely raises questions about the traditional separation between military roles and domestic law enforcement. It suggests potentially using national security capabilities more directly for local policing issues.
Yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Okay, what about holding state and local officials accountable? The order mentioned that too.
Right, Section 5. This gives the Attorney General a mandate to pursue legal action, all necessary legal remedies against state or local jurisdictions where officials are found to be willfully and unlawfully obstructing criminal law.
Like telling police not to enforce certain laws.
That seems to be the kind of scenario envisioned, yeah.
Yeah.
Including prohibiting police from carrying out what the order deems necessary duties.
Yeah.
This could definitely set up some federal versus local legal fights.
Okay, so legal action for obstructing law enforcement. What was the other part of that accountability section? Something about DEI.
Yes. The order also directs the AG to pursue remedies against officials who unlawfully engage in discrimination or civil rights violations under the guise of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
under the guise of DEI.
that restrict law enforcement activity or endanger citizens. That's the specific wording. If such cases arise, the order says prosecuting related federal criminal law violations should be prioritized.
So the federal government is basically saying if it thinks a local DEI policy is discriminatory and hinders police or endangers people, they can step in potentially with criminal charges against officials.
That appears to be the implication, yes. It's asserting federal authority to intervene if these specific conditions are met, framing certain local policies as potentially harmful to safety or rights.
Okay, that's quite assertive. Lastly, there was a mention of Homeland Security task forces. How do they fit in?
Yes, Section 6, it basically tells the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security to use these existing task forces.
HSTS.
Homeland Security Task Forces. They were actually set up under a different executive order, EO 14159, which was titled Protecting the American People Against Invasion.
Against invasion, okay.
So this new order says those existing task forces should also be used to coordinate and advance the goals of this order, the one about strengthening law enforcement.
So using anti-invasion task forces to also work on domestic policing issues.
It seems to be leveraging an existing structure, potentially bringing a Homeland Security focus or coordination mechanism to these domestic law enforcement objectives. Suggests a kind of joined-up federal effort.
Got it. And then finally, those general provisions at the end. Anything crucial there?
Mostly standard stuff you see in these orders. Section 7 clarifies a few things, like this order doesn't override the existing authority of any agency head.
Right.
Implementation depends on the law, and importantly, on whether Congress actually provides the money, the availability of appropriations.
Ah, the budget reality check.
Exactly. And it also explicitly states that this order doesn't create any new rights or benefits that someone could sue the government over.
Okay, so it sets the direction, but acknowledges legal limits, budget constraints, and doesn't open the door for new lawsuits against the feds based on this order alone.
Precisely. So if we just kind of pull back for a second.
Yeah, let's recap.
This executive order is really aiming for a significant boost to state and local law enforcement, right? Through legal defense, new practices, better training and pay, more resources, stronger legal protections.
Plus reviewing those federal reform agreements, potentially rolling them back.
Right, and bringing in national security assets and asserting federal power to go after local officials under specific circumstances related to obstructing law or certain DEI policies.
So, thinking about all that, what parts do you think people listening, maybe people our age, will actually see or feel the effects of most directly in their own communities?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It really depends on how it gets implemented on the ground.
Yeah.
But you might see changes in, say, police presence if resources increase. Maybe different kinds of equipment because of the military asset provision.
Or maybe changes in how police interact with people, depending on what happens with those consent decrees or the push for aggressive policing.
Potentially. How will local departments interpret aggressive policing? What happens if federal oversight via consent decrees is reduced? Will training changes make a noticeable difference? And what about using military or national security capabilities locally? What does that look like in practice? These are things communities will likely experience differently.
It really gives us, and you listening, a lot to think about regarding where law enforcement and public safety might be headed locally. This deep dive definitely lays out the administration's intended path.
It absolutely does. And maybe a final thought to leave you with is, well, it's about balance, isn't it?
The balance between what?
Between the stated goal of empowering law enforcement to, crack down on crime more aggressively, and the ongoing need to ensure accountability, transparency, and protect everyone's civil rights.
Right. Empowering police versus ensuring they're accountable.
Exactly. How those two potentially competing priorities get navigated as this order is put into practice. That's probably the fundamental tension to watch. It's something that will likely shape policing and communities for years to come.